Justin Horowitz with you tonight as we get set for the Thursday night racing card. And my special guest tonight is the Meadowlands Race Secretary since 2008, Peter Koch. Pete, thanks for being with us.
It's a pleasure to be here, Justin.
All right, so we're here to talk about the big news at the Meadowlands, the return to classified racing, condition racing. No more classified racing in the ABC system. Now we're going to the condition system. What's the big difference between the two?
Well, 2.5 years ago, in a joint decision between management and the horsemen, we decided to give classified racing a chance, which is basically the race secretary assigns a letter, and that's where the horse races as far as the condition. And there's pluses and minuses to any different systems, but the best thing with classified racing is if you have a lot of horses to work with. And we have a little bit of a thinning horse population right now, and the horsemen felt, let's go back to conditioned racing, and so we're going to go back to conditioned racing.
So under the previous system, we had C2s, C1s, Bs, As, free-for-all. Now we have based on the money that horses have won in their last 5 starts. We have a graphic that'll kind of show the comparisons for the fans out there. So you can see now when you're looking at your program, and you're going to see races tonight for non-winners of 5,000 in their last 5. That kind of corresponds to the races we previously know as C2s, right?
Correct, right. Basically, a non-winners of 5,000 would be roughly equal to a C2, 7,500 a C1, non-winners of 10,000 a B2, non-winners of 15,000 a B1, and then the A's would be the higher class, non-winners of 20,000. So it's a pretty good comparison. It's not see, because the letter classes are not based on money. It's more subjective of what the racing department thinks your horse is. So that's sometimes where a horseman might have a little bit of a problem, because they would think, okay, well, I have a certain amount of money made, I should be this class, and we might think that the horse is a little bit better than the money that they've made recently, and so that's one of the bones of contention with classified racing.
So now that we are going back to that system now, how would you say in 2.5 years, which is longer than any other track has run this ABC system in recent memory, how successful would you say the system was?
Well, if you go back in history, probably in the beginning of harness racing up until the 60s, most racetracks used classified ABC racing, okay? And then more conditioned racing came in. In fact, the Meadowlands always had conditioned racing and never had ABC racing. The two most famous places to have it for the longest period of time were Yonkers and Roosevelt. Yonkers and Roosevelt did it for years, and it was very successful for them, but there was a much bigger horse population. There was 1,200 horses on the grounds at Roosevelt, and so things were different. I think it was pretty successful here, and we had some very contentious races, but we're going to take a shot and change. So hopefully this is going to work out for us.
So big proponents of the ABC system, one thing they loved about it was the fact that races were designed to be as competitive as possible with as full fields as possible. The critics would say that because there wasn't a huge horse population, at times you had to combine classes to get the full fields. So now that we're going back to the new system, back to the future, so to speak, are you still satisfied with the idea that we're going to have full fields, competitive races, and most importantly, good wagering opportunities for the handicappers?
That's always the hope, is for us to have competitive races and full fields. That's what we strive to do, and our customers are used to 10-horse fields, and we try and give them to them. What happened with classified racing is each class really basically figured out what it was, and a C2 was a C2, and then there was a pretty good difference between a C2 and a C1. So if you did have to combine a C2 and a C1, most oftentimes the C1s would beat the C2s. So that was a problem. Hopefully with the condition races, we're not going to have to alter the conditions, and it's pretty cut and dry how much the earnings are where the horse goes.
Now, an important fact to note about the new system is that trainers will not be able to drop their horses more than one class at a time. Explain how that's important and how that's going to work.
Right. Well, there's different caps, which that's a clause which you put onto a conditioned race, and sometimes it's for a certain amount of money made over the last year or 2 years, and we've put in a clause where basically you can just drop from the one class. If you're in non-winners of 15,000 and then you make less than 10,000, you can drop to the non-winners at 10,000, but you can't drop to the non-winners at 7,500 or the non-winners at 5,000. So horses are just going to drop one class at a time, because basically I worked for someone a long time ago who said on 1 to 9 shot, you can't bet on them and you can't bet against them. So that's what we try and avoid.
Exactly. Another thing that you've said this new system will lend itself well to is perhaps having more claiming races, which is something the Meadowlands had quite a bit of back in the good old days, and hopefully we'll see more of that. Is that what you're expecting?
We're very hopeful we can get the claimers going again. We do have a 25,000 claimer on Saturday night, which is a very competitive race, and we're hoping down the road, because people know that when you get into the upper levels of these conditioned races, now when it's at 10,000, now when it's at 15,000, they're very difficult. So hopefully they might go into a 30,000 claimer or something like that, and they've always been great races for us in the past.
Now, under the ABC system, we had the Dash for the C Notes, which are having the finals of that series the next 3 nights here at the Meadowlands. But we're not going to have the C's anymore. They're going to be non-winners of 5,000. Are we still going to see the Dash for the C Notes in those series? Because that's really good racing.
Well, as you see tonight, I mean, the 7th race is a final for the Mares C2 Dash for the C Notes, and it's a great competitive race, and basically you can make a case for the whole field. And so I think the fans like these races, the horsemen like it. It gives a chance for a cheaper horse to go for some money. So we're definitely going to do something like that, and maybe we're going to have some kind of contest to see if we can come up with a great name instead of the Dash for the C Notes, and so, but I'll leave that up to our marketing department.
Now, one more question. Some people have said that in the ABC system, it was a challenge for handicappers to compare horses that were racing out of town in the condition system, and then when they came here in the classified system, how they were able to compare the 2 class levels. Now, is it going to be a challenge with the different purse structure at out-of-town tracks for same class of horses that would race here, but the purses might be higher out of town? What's the challenge then in taking those horses from out of town when they come to the Meadowlands and putting them in a race that makes sense and puts them in a competitive spot for handicappers to have that full balanced field to bet on?
Well, we do have, as I said, some of those purse bars. I mean, so the horses racing in, because horses are forced up to higher classes when they're going for more money at some of the slot-infused purses at the other tracks. So we will have that. But I think it's actually going to be better for handicapping in that, you know, if a horse is racing in non-winners at 12,000 in Yonkers or something, and then they come over and race in a non-winners at 10,000 here, they'll be roughly equal classes. So people will be able to see, because basically everybody uses the money conditions, so they'll be able to compare to our classes and hopefully be able to figure out a winner.
Now, you're not you can't predict the future, but would you say that this move is permanent, or is this an experiment? Is there a chance we'll go back to the ABC system? What's kind of the thinking from that standpoint?
Well, I guess we would examine how the betting goes, and I'm sure we're going to be at the conditioned racing for the remainder of the meet. We can't drive our people crazy, and 1 week it's ABC and 1 week it's conditioned races. So I would count on this through the end of August, and we'll see how it goes, and hopefully it works well. We'll have to see.
Well, hopefully everything does work out well. It's interesting for you to come and explain a lot of the nuances of the racing system from the race office perspective. That's Racing Secretary Pete Koch. Thanks for joining us.
Always glad to be here.
All right, we'll have Jen Bongiorno join me next as we get ready for tonight's 10-race card.